Hello, man. Hello, Mgtows. Just gotta wait a second here for my YouTube to come up so I can hear my voice and see how I sound and all that stuff. And I'm not hearing anything.
Hear my voice.
Okay, there we go. Let me mute that and go back to StreamYard and better see my face on StreamYard than YouTube. Okay, today we're going to talk a little bit about cognitive biases and look at a couple forms of cognitive bias. And we're going to look at basically what happens in gynocentrism and cognitive bias. A couple things I've seen over the years. It just bothers me when people bias what they see. And then one of the biggest questions I've often had is two people can look at the same thing, the same event, and both people will see something different. As a private detective, we know that as just cognitive biases, people react people react differently to different things, and it's usually a form of belief before the incident happened, what they want to see, what they'll permit themselves to see. But some people, and a lot of people do this, they can look at a video, they can look at a movie, and I noticed this with an ex-friend of mine, that they can see a movie and they will interpret the movie totally different than I interpret the movie. They can watch a video and see something totally different what their mind permits them to see. In gynocentrism, this is important. Because there's a lot of cognitive bias in the judicial system, and we have to get it. But it's always weird when you see it. One of the biggest incidents I've seen with cognitive bias is the Ray Rice case. I did an experiment at that point with Ray Rice, the Ray Rice videos of him walking into the elevator. What was happening as he was walking in, what happened while he was in the elevator, what happened at the end of the film in the elevator ride, and all those things. And I asked 5 of my buddies, 5 blue pill men, what they seen. And each one of them said they seen Ray Rice hit his girlfriend. And then I went back and reviewed the tape, and I watched her hit him 6 times, 5 or 6 times before, and he never flinched. He's walking in, he got hit at least 3 times on the back of the head and the shoulders by her. He walks in the elevator, he gets hit again. And what the most interesting part is, Ray Rice never hit his girlfriend, and the judge agreed with that. And the NFL then didn't agree with that. They ruined his career. A lot of things happened after that, but the most interesting part is when humans are persuaded by media in their gynocentric beliefs, and I think it's a gynocentric belief system, that Ray Rice actually hit his girlfriend. Ray Rice didn't hit his girlfriend. He flicked her off as she was charging him, and she hit her head on the bar. If you watch it, you'll see the same thing I seen. The judge agreed and said that's what happened. She hit him, and why charges weren't being brought up against her were just bizarre. And Ray Rice had to go into court and say, no, don't bring charges up against her. And then how the media interpreted that was Ray Rice apologized for not for hitting his girlfriend, which he never really did. He did a sort of football move where he brought his elbow over and she hit her head. And if you watch it, I think you'll see that. But 5 of my buddies I showed this to, and then I asked them, what'd you see? And then they said, well, I seen Ray Rice hit his girlfriend. And that's bad. That's wrong, man. You should never hit a girl. And that's the programming they get. And there's several kinds of cognitive biases that go into that. But it's always funny and it's always hilarious to me that, and it's not hilarious, it's disturbing to me. It's disturbing to me that somebody can watch something, look at it, examine it, study it, and then come to a totally different idea of what happened besides what reality was. And the science of reality, and I study the science of reality, and I study reality in itself. What is reality? And those things. But but most of all in this world, what you're going to see is a lot of different kinds of cognitive bias. You're going to see some cognitive biases in religion too, and you're going to see it in the battle of atheism versus Christianity, and it all gets so ridiculous because it's really a trivial matter of observation. It's like saying, I look out at a pond and I say, I think there's fish in there. I can't see the fish, but I think there's fish in there. And then somebody comes up to me and says, well, I don't think there's any fish in there. And then I'm like, dude, I'm just saying, I think it's something trivial. It's a trivial matter is what I'm saying. I'm saying, dude, I think there's fish in there. What the person does, he makes it into an argument. There is no argument there. And then he makes you into a searcher. SFM used to have a great line for this. He would say, at that point when someone makes you into something that you're not, you're just making an observation that you think there's fish in that little pond there, and they're making you into a searcher. And SFM used to say, don't make me into a geographer. I'm not a geographer. Don't make me open a map and go look for this. And what I'm saying is, don't make me go look for this God. And in reality, what you're doing is you're making me into something, and that reverses itself. And I say, well, you're going to have to prove this. And they'll say, you're going to have to prove this, Joe. I say, I don't need to prove it. What you need to do is prove that there is no fish in there. And then I make them into something. And I'll say, what do I look like, a sea captain? I'm not a sea captain, which I am a sea captain, but I'm not a sea captain. It's not my responsibility to know where the fish are. I'm just saying, I think that there's fish in this pond, and that's just a trivial statement. We make trivial statements all the time in life, but a lot of times trivial statements become ambiguity, and a lot of times people take these things too far. And my thing is just point and laugh. I just point and laugh at these people. You guys are just silly arguing about this, whether they believe this or not. They have the right to believe it, and they have the right not to believe it. That's the important part. And the only time it really matters is when someone starts forcing these things into your rights and into your space. They say, you have to believe this. No, I don't. And I don't have to not believe this either. Not believing in something. And I always say, not believing in something is a non-state of affairs. It's like, I'm not in Cleveland. Well, what the hell does it matter if you're not in Cleveland? You're not in Taiwan. You're not in Hong Kong. Boy, I'm glad I wasn't. I was not there. It doesn't matter that you were not there. That's what not belief in God is. It doesn't matter that you don't believe in that. That's a non-state of affairs. It means nothing to anybody. What you have to do is scientifically become a scientist on these things. And you say, well, if I don't believe in this, and I do know it's not a trivial matter to some people, then I have to prove it. And then you make him the searcher. He makes you the searcher. And then we got two searchers, two geographers, which I call them, or a sea captain and a geographer, searching for this God that probably doesn't exist. And it all becomes also confusing. And the argument gets out of hand then, and it saturates a lot of our lives. They start drawing us into this silly argument. But there's a lot of cognitive biases that happen during that thing, and people do all these silly cognitive biases, and they're not silly. They're actually quite fascinating. Gynocentrism in itself, the propensity to err on the side of a female, like they did in the Ray Rice case, is a classic example of gynocentrism. Let me look back and see who is in, and I say Mgtow, the mad scientist. Yeah. Classic examples of gynocentrism would be the Ray Rice case. When I've had 5 buddies take a look at that and actually say that he hit her, when the judge after that agreed with my analogy, not that I was there, and said, no, he never really hit her. He deflected her, a charging person, off of him. That's what he had done. And then the NFL agreed. The NFL usurped that agreement and said, hey, you should never hit a girl. And you should never make a girl unhappy. That's what you're saying when you say never hit a girl, because you're saying there's never an incident where she may deserve, like she comes in a restaurant with a gun, a girl comes in a restaurant with a gun, you're not allowed to hit her. That's what they're saying. She steals from you. You're not allowed to hit her. She charges you with a knife. And we just seen this with another NFL star, Terrell Pryor. Was it Terrell Pryor? Or yeah, I think it was Terrell Pryor. He got stabbed, and they says by his girlfriend, and they charged him and said, you made the girl unhappy. There's cognitive biases that go along with these things, and these cognitive biases are dangerous to men. And I think it's Mgtow's responsibility as being people. There is a cognitive bias that I can't remember which one it is, but the cognitive bias is some people have the propensity to see cognitive biases. Some people don't have the propensity to see cognitive biases. So we're going to talk about a couple different kinds of cognitive bias and how they relate to Mgtow and what we're going to see. I would say that there's a gynocentric cognitive bias. Men want to believe that women are right all the time, and there's never could be a woman that's not an angel, and there's no right ever to hit her because she's an angel, and they never do anything to deserve that. The first one I wanted to talk about was the ambiguity effect. I talked about the ambiguity effect earlier. The ambiguity effect is things that are ambiguous, and they tend to agree with something that it's a decision that lacks information. It's an ambiguous decision. The effect applies that they tend to select options which are probably in the favorable outcome. And this goes both ways. You can have a favorable outcome, and you can an unfavorable observation, or what I call an unfavorable observation, or is an unfavorable outcome. So they select things that are biased, and that's what I kind of seen with the Ray Rice thing. With they were already pre-biased, and there was no favorable outcome on this. You can't say in the blue pill world that there was a situation where she deserved it. So they would say simply continue with the bias because it would provide a favorable outcome for them. And even though the outcome would be unknown, what if, and the outcome is still unknown. What if the judge would have said, take Mrs. blah, blah, blah to the jail. She's going to be tried for hitting Ray Rife. That would change everything. There would be a change in what's the word I'm looking for? There would be a change in all of everybody would start looking at it and go, oh no, you can't do that. You cannot try her for hitting him 6 times before he made a defensive move. That's not in their paradigm. There would be a paradigm change in law if he would have done that. So there was never that paradigm change where the legal people would actually look at what had happened there and say, no, she hit him 6 times. She should go to jail for that. And it doesn't matter what Ray Rice or the lawyers think, the state would pick it up, just like they do in domestic violence cases. It doesn't matter what she wants after that. The state picks it up, and it doesn't matter. They go, okay, you're injured. You're not thinking right, so we're going to pick up the case and we're just going to proceed with it whether you like it or not. And that's what happens in America. So there's the ambiguity effect, and that's a bias that they're just going to go with what is a favorable outcome. What's best for the law is just to pick up the thing and not have all the argument. Now, the next one was there's many things that come in here when you're looking at that rate. How could a person not see what actually happened? How can a person do that? It's vision, it's sight, it's cognitive interpretation. There's a whole lot of things that you would think your eyes would just pick this up. And you go, oh no, that's what happened. That's not what happens in a real life. Cognitive bias is a real thing, and it's a real thing in gynocentrism. These people are preset. They have presuppositions. They're preset to believe these things, and are not going to. So when we look at it, I thought there was 3 that were important. There's probably 12 different kinds of cognitive biases, or more, maybe like 27 or something. I'm not going to go for the time that I have and everything to keep your interest. I'm not going to go over all of them. So we have that. We have the ambiguity effect. You can look it up. We have a compassion fade. Now, you guys know the compassion fade. When a girl is sitting in court, she's a single person. And that comes in, oh, you poor thing, you were violently beaten, and they take that more serious. uh, they take that a single person's event more serious than men being put in slavery by child support and men being put in slavery in jail for debtor's prison, which breaks two of our constitutional rights. The judge will look at her as a victim, not the whole of hundreds of thousands of men being put in jail and being put into slavery positions. It's called I call it the compassion fade. It's called the compassion fade. There's a great, it's a cognitive bias that predisposes the people to behave more compassionately towards a small number or a small identifiable victim than a large number. A large number. Joseph Stalin said this. His quote was, "The death of one man is a tragedy, but the death of millions is a statistic." That's a compassion fade. So that's what happened with Ray Rice's girlfriend. She was one person. She was a victim of this evil man. Ooh. And then, so everybody, it's like the Greta Thunberg thing. She's just a little girl. You can't pick on her. She's just one little single girl. But if millions of people think this way, it's just statistics after that. It's just statistics. Millions of people, and our climate doesn't matter, and it's just statistics. And so we'll lay it all on one little girl's back, a 16-year-old little girl that's autistic's back. People do weird things in cognitive biases. Whether you believe in climate change is just not really important to me. I think it's a trivial matter. But it's just the arguments people do after that I love. Who biases things? Who doesn't bias things? There's a propensity for some people to see biases. Some people can't even see them. It's like they're autistic to biases, and that disturbs me. And that's what we get in Mgtow. They're autistic. They cannot see gynocentrism. There's a blind hole. It's like a flyby. It goes one ear and out the other, like your mom would say. They can't see it. There's not the propensity to err on the side of a woman, to judge on the side of the woman, even though that's one victim in a small number of victims compared to the large amount of victims that you're going to make by having these laws. And those victims are men. What my beliefs, we are not fathers, we're just payers, paytors, which means father in German. Paytor comes from payer terminal. You're a payer terminal. And that's the way it is. That's the way it is. And it goes back to the favorable outcomes thing. The ambiguity effect is the favorable outcome for the government to make you into a slave, make you into a debtor, and then put you in prison for it. for small trivial matters such as infidelity and stuff like that. There's these, you made a girl unhappy. That's a law. That's a real law, and it gets pushed every day, but it's an unspoken law, and it's a cognitive bias, is you made a girl unhappy. Now, the third time is conservatism, the traditional conservatism. Conservatism is a bias, if you didn't know that. If you're a conservative person, you're biasing things. It's a cognitive and psychological bias of conservatism, or conservatism bias in the brain of humans, that process which refers to the tendency to revise your position when feasible information can be had. So you believe in something. So you believe in Jesus, or you believe in God, or you believe that there's fish in this lake, and then they net the lake up and they go, there's no fish in this lake. And you go, well, there's still fish in that lake. You won't revise your position after that. After a scientific study was done, okay, you look at a pond and you go, there's fish in that pond. And then a scientific study, a geographer comes in. I love saying that, geographer comes in and he goes, nope, no fish in that pond. Haven't found a single one. And you go, nope. There's still fish in that pond. I believe there's fish in that pond. That's a conservative bias. And this comes in with with the Ray Rice thing and the gynocentrism thing, my 5 friends say they seen Ray Rice hit her. And they're conservative, they're traditional conservatives. They're not going to change their mind about that. No, and that was always the question, or that was always the answer. How could these people, when confronted with scientific evidence, such as a video, not be able to change their minds about how they believe or how they judge these things? When we bias things, it's an inability to judge things scientifically, to make scientific decisions in your life, to make rational decisions. Males are rational, so I think there's a propensity on the side of males to be able to see cognitive biases. But in this case, with gynocentrism, that ability to see cognitive biases seems to evade people. A lot of people say that they think it's red pill. The red pill is the ability to see cognitive biases in people, and then whatever cognitive bias you pick and you seem to focus on sometimes becomes the cognitive bias. It becomes cognitive bias in itself. You become biased. That's what I was talking about with the bias of ambiguities. Sometimes we do that, and it works itself out in like 3 different ways, 4 different ways, and people can't see what they're actually biasing. They become the bias in themselves. Yeah, religion, Mgtow, is a form of slave control. Let me say hello to everybody. Aaron Rubens, Milk Apple, Boarding Games, Hank, the Mean Man, Aaron Rubin, Gaming Board, everybody, Magnus Online. Hello, everybody that came in. And we're talking about cognitive biases today. We're talking about cognitive biases and in gynocentrism, when you know, like, you're at a bar, though, you're sitting here and you're observing. You're the observer. You're going to be the observer on this, and then that's usually what Mgtows are. We're sitting back in our Mgtow seats, and we're eating some popcorn, and we're watching the world go by in front of us, and we're observing on the Mgtow bench, and we point and we laugh when we look at everybody. Looks absurd out there when you start seeing the cognitive biases of gynocentrism. But so far, the scientists haven't labeled gynocentrism even a word. They're not going to label it a cognitive bias. We're going to have to push that into fruition. We're going to have to push that into the insight of people, and that's our job as Mgtows, is to say gynocentrism is a cognitive bias. You're erring on the side of a woman just because she's a woman, because there's special rules, and there's don't make a woman unhappy rules. And that's gynocentrism. And if you start reading at any point Ella Vister's The Manipulated Man, you'll see all the cognitive biases that we do. Oh, sorry, I have a sore throat this week. I was out riding my bike all week in the snow and the 20-degree weather, and I got a little chest soreness and everything. So we're talking about the cognitive biases and gynocentrism. You see it all the time when you're sitting at a bar. If a woman starts getting flippant, you're going to have the white knight. And this plays out in several different ways sometimes. Capra's drama triangle is usually how it plays out in those kind of situations where there's a victim, there's a rescuer, and there's the other person, which is the aggressor. And then the woman will start being flippant. The aggressor will say, "Shut the F up." The rescuer, which we know as the White Knight, will come save her, and then he'll beat up the the aggressor for the woman in the cognitive bias, and then the aggressor becomes the victim. The female will rush to the victim and become and this thing changes and it goes around and around and around. There's a great story that some Mgtow did a long time ago about a fisherman saving a woman from an island, bring her over to the other side, and then all of a sudden everything switched. The fisherman had to beat up the guy that was the aggressor, and then with that he became the aggressor himself, and the aggressor became the victim, and then the female became the rescuer. Karpman's triangle, if you haven't, that's about rotating cognitive biases and stuff like that, which is really weird. And these are the things in Mgtow that we used to teach, how these things are going to pay out when we looked at the white knight, when we looked at the beggar. We had theories that came alongside of to align our philosophy, but I think that's lost now in Mgtow. A lot of the guys don't know the theories that I'll approve that by Magnus Online. I'm sorry if some things don't get approved right away. I'm trying to talk and I have to approve because I'm still under some kind of thing by YouTube because I got 3 strikes on my channel a year and a half ago. I'm only allowed to do this if I, do certain things. So one of the things was Father No. I haven't seen Father No around, and hello, Father No. So the cognitive biases involved in being a white knight is Karpman's triangle, Karpman's triangle, the drama triangle. Just type it in. And we start seeing these things. And we used to have a philosophy in here, but nowadays it's all like, why we think the way we do in Mgtow. There used to be a heavy philosophy, and we had scientific evidence why we back our decisions up with this. And we used to use science and everything, but I think that's tailed back to, it's all feminism's fault, which is ridiculous. That's just cognitive bias in itself. I don't care what they're doing. I'm a Mgtow monk. Whatever the women are doing, I don't really care. Do it over there. Don't bring it to my door, and then it will never become the same act as I was talking about. When religion becomes an act, that's when I have to act upon it. When somebody comes to my door, I'll usually become sarcastic. I'll put my kufi on, and I'll go, can I help you with my kufi? And I'll have a prop or something I'll be holding, and they'll just immediately go, can I give you the watchtower? And they'll walk away quite quickly. And I have to, that's when I think it's offensive, when religion starts pushing its way into your life. But anyways, I don't run out to the street and go, you guys can't do that. That's what I was talking about with the fishermen. There's no fish in that sea. Then I become the searcher. I become the geographer, and that I become the sea captain. And no fish over there. And that's another cognitive bias. So I believe that the Constitution is right about these things. I say they're allowed to believe. I'm allowed to not believe. All those Christians that want to push holiday fever on me, I don't believe. So quit pushing it on me, and then I won't have to run out in the street, and in this case, punch a hole in somebody because I don't want to have that stuff pushed on me. We all have our choices in life, and that's the way I like to. But the cognitive bias thing is just so interesting because you can actually see it. You watch, if you're watching TV with a beer at a bar, BW3 is having some wings with your buddies. You're going to notice a commercial come on, and it's going to be slightly gynocentric, and one guy's going to think it's about something else, one thing, and one guy's going to think it's about another thing, and this guy thinks it's about something totally bizarre, and you start wondering what the hell did they see there? Because it wasn't what I seen. Usually now I was very diligent about the Ray Rice thing. I had to go back and rewind, look before even my brain, because it was so saturated with the point. Media bias. Media will bias something that that you'll actually come in believing it. It's a presupposition. You'll have the presupposition of believing that bias, and then you have to detangle that in your head. I just seen this in football yesterday with who's Hunt from the Browns, and they said they said in the media, I think it was Mary Kay Cabot said, Hunt said that the guys weren't playing up to 110%, which is ridiculous. Nobody plays at 100%, 10%. You pay 100% of your ability. And Nick, he said, I think he stuttered a little during his thing. And he said that I think that the guys were playing to 110%, which is a ridiculous observation anyways. And then they come out and they said, Nick, what's his name? Hunt. Kareem Hunt said that the guys on the team weren't, and they didn't say that, but you had to go back and you had to rewatch it, listen to it, rewatch it, listen to it. And then you realized that he stuttered. And then he got a little confused and he didn't say that, but the media was all over him and said, and then everybody was believing it. And I said, you guys, you could watch that and really believe. And I was on the sports page. You go back and rewind and watch that and see what exactly happened there, then make a decision. That happens every day in the media. The media will influence and bias things with their presuppositions, and then you'll get that. You have to unwind that view. You have to make that thing go away because you already been fed that. You're being force-fed things, garbage that is illogical. So in those things, I think it's important that we look. We look at the cognitive bias. We look at what's happening. We look at what's happening with certain things, and we try to find the scientific view on these things, and the explanation of why it happened. And it's still a mystery to me, and it's still very, very disturbing when I see a blue pill guy, a white knight, a simp, a punk, or a beggar, them cackling hyenas out there that we talk about, when they'll actually look at something and then not see what was the truth. And that's just, wow, how'd you do that? How'd you do that in your mind? And then we get into subjection, what's subjection, what's subjective in this world, and what's not subjective. I had a guy once tell me that he looked down at the cup. I'll use an ashtray. He looked at the cup and he said, "This cup isn't real." And I said, "Nope, that cup's real." And he said, "No, man, it's all subjective. It's relative," because he was reading something in Einstein's relativity, and he was taking that to relativity in what we'd call the philosophy of science. And then he was saying, well, he was conflating the two things. The atoms on this were lined up somewhat different, and he was it's all subjective. And I was like, no, it doesn't work that way. This microphone's real. It's broadcasting to all of you, and it's real. My keyboard, my desk, I am real. It's not all subjective, and it doesn't mean that we don't exist. So that was a misinterpretation of some kind of deity that he was following, and it was I was like, wow, you really believe that? But a lot of people do that. They can go through their whole lives and misinterpret the reality of the world. And that's where us Mgtows come in, I think. And we're very rational. We are the rational males, and the females would say that's the bias in itself, because we're perceived as rational. And actually, in feminism, Sandra Harding's Feminism, 1998, I just happen to know that. That's what she was saying, that the bias in itself in science comes the misandry, or the misogyny comes in, where human males are considered to be rational and human females are considered to be emotional or intuitive. Intuitive is the scientific term for that. And we know that intuitivity is always an opinion, like someone saying you're a misogynist, which it comes back on itself right away. And it's so funny. It comes back on itself right away. Anything that they say women do primatology better in feminism because they're intuitive to the animals. And and that comes back right away. What is intuitive? Intuitive is always an opinion. Men are misogynist is just an opinion of someone, because you can't really prove misogyny. It's just an intuitive opinion. And I mean, unless you say that women are the HOR, WHORE words, and they'll say, no, that's not you're not allowed to say that. Well, that's my opinion. The same as them saying I'm a misogynist, but I'm not allowed to have my opinion in that sense, but they're allowed to have their opinion in that sense, which is gynocentrism. Do you see how biased things get? But it's our responsibility to detangle these things. And man, for years I looked at it and it was just like, wow, what am I seeing there? That is such a mess, such a tangled mess. And then as you grow up in Mgtow and you start doing the actual philosophy of Mgtow rather than the women are all feminists and I hate them's philosophy, you start growing up in life, and then this thing broadcasts out into your life. You start seeing it in TV, you start seeing it at the store and the pricing, you start seeing it in politics, you start seeing it everywhere. All roads begin to lead back to Mgtow. And then you become a more honest, a more appreciative person of what you're seeing around you. You try to stay away, go do your thing. Your individuality comes out. You see the world in a more honest way, and then you become a Mgtow. And that's all we want for all these guys. But it takes a lot of deprogramming. That gynocentrism needs to be deprogrammed, and you have to learn the language, and the language just isn't just 5 words that people flippantly throw out there with no meaning behind them. 5 Mgtow words. Guys know what the 5 Mgtow big hit words are, so I'm not going to go over them. But there's a lot to this thing, and that's it becomes a lifelong endeavor to change the world and the way people we're having. We want a paradigm change in the world, and the only way we're going to get a paradigm change in the world is through scientific discovery and philosophy and those things, and explaining how gynocentrism is wrong, and there's biases included in that, and it's our responsibility to do the work, not just get in this endless loop of feminists are bad and it's all politics, and anything I can see at face value in the paper is probably true. That's not true. There are biases. There's traditional biases, and there's the biases of ambiguity. You can look them up, and then you can apply them as you read them to what you're seeing. And that's all my little video today was about. And I wanted to stop in and say, yes, humans are inbred. I read an article this year that humans were domesticated because of Williams-Keller disease. Early humans, the result of this certain disease and this certain way humans develop our facial figures and stuff is because there was early domestication of humans. You can read that in the scientific journals this month if you want, but you have to actually go read it. Didn't we all come from No, we didn't all come from Africa. According to the Bible, we all came but the Bible's not a scientific journal. It's we come from all over the places. We developed all over the world, and different strains of humans, from Ireland to Africa to China to Brazil to the American Indian, up to even Canada. So that's all I wanted to talk about today, and I wanted to talk about the cognitive bias and gynocentrism. And when you look at something, and when you see your buddies out there, your blue pill buddies, and you see something like Ray Rice, he's in trouble because he defended himself, not because he hit a woman. He defended herself and he made a girl unhappy. And thank God he had a reasonable judge in that place that actually looked at the video and said, no, that's not what happened. No matter what the media said that happened, it's not true. It was biased, but it's our responsibility to to change these things as Mgtows, as rational Mgtow males. And that always brings me up to my end of my videos where I say, you know, thank God for each and every one of you coming around. Otherwise, I'd be doing this alone. And I thank each and every one of you for coming around today. And thanks a lot for being a Mgtow. Mgtow.